in Nashville. Of the about 105 Jewish households in 1860, only 7 owned slaves. And those Jews who did own slaves tended to own few. Of those 7 slave-owning families in Nashville, they owned total 7 slaves. Right? They each owned 1. And so most Jews, and I think this is true in the play, who owned slaves tended to own them as house servants. That was because Jews tended to live in cities. There are examples of Jewish sort of plantation owners, and I'll talk about one in just a moment, but they really were the exception. So the bottom line is that there really was no uniquely Jewish response to slavery. According to the historian Bertram Korn, quote, "It was only a matter of financial circumstances and familial status whether Jews were to become slave owners," unquote. Okay, so, well, how did Jews treat their slaves? And this is an issue in the play as well. There is discussion on these sort of rules of slavery. And I've taught Sunday school and had to get to the part of the Torah that talks about those rules of slavery. I skipped over it because I didn't know how to explain it to the kids, but they're in there. So did Jews follow these rules? Did they treat their slaves better than non-Jewish owners? And this is a difficult question to examine. Sources and evidence are limited. The man I mentioned before, Bertram Korn, who's done the best study of this, is actually a pretty old study, but still very good. He examined the wills of Southern Jews and found and looked to see, well, did a Jew free their slaves upon their death? And he found some did, some didn't. Right? Some instead bequeathed them to their heirs as property. Some had their slaves sold at auction. Though some did grant their slaves freedom, and even in some cases gave them property. Others decreed in their wills that slaves should be treated humanely, and that slave families should be kept together after their death, or after the owner's death. So again, there really, and this is just as true for non-Jewish slave owners as well, so there really is no evidence that Jewish slave owners were significantly different from non-Jewish slave owners in how they treated their slaves. The next question, which goes directly to the play, is did they try to convert them? Did Jewish owners raise, in a sense, Jewish slaves? And there are not many examples of this phenomenon, in contrast to Christian slave owners who did, in many cases, teach Christianity to their slaves. That did not happen often in the sort of Jewish world, and I think there's a few reasons. One, Judaism by nature is not an evangelistic religion, unlike Christianity. And there was one that actually was raised in the play that I actually hadn't considered, but I'm going to share it with you, is the idea that, according to Jewish law, Jews are not supposed to own Jewish slaves. Right? These slaves are from, they're supposed to be non-Jews. So perhaps if they, that was one reason as well. But there were enough instances of slaves adopting Judaism that you can see this in the early constitutions of some of the early Southern congregations. So in Charleston, for example, the congregation Beth Elohim, in its constitution, banned black members, banned black converts from membership during the antebellum period. And in Richmond, where the play is set, Beth Shalom, which was founded in 1789, and its founding constitution limited membership to what it called free men.